Attorneys, if you own a law firm but you are not keeping up with technology, it is time for you to get with the program. If you don't, you're going to get left behind and eventually going to get phased out, and you can't let that happen. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you how even the most non-technical attorney can take the steps to build a more modern and efficient practice and work smarter, not harder, by using automations. I'm going to start by showing you a visual representation of an automation so you can see the process, and then we'll talk more into details about each step and what you need to do. This is an intake process. Okay, so this is an intake process for an actual law firm, and these are the steps that we lined out, they lined out as to what they wanted to happen. When they got a new lead, they want to be able to follow up with them correctly, create new retainers, send them a retainer, send invoices, etc. So we drew up this process and looking at it here. So first, there are two ways that a lead comes into their firm. One, they call and the person on the phone fills out an intake form, name, phone number, email, practice area, what is it that they need help with, then they try to schedule a consultation. Or they can also come from the website, right? So they fill out a form on the website, on the contact page most likely, or on the landing page, and they come in as lead. What needed to happen then is, okay, if they schedule a consultation, we're going to automate sending them SMS confirmations, sending them a welcome email, and also sending them appointment reminders. All that is automated, right? So this is automated. This is an intake phone, a phone person taking the intake call. Now, eventually, if the consultation is scheduled, what happens is at that point, you have the manual step of actually consulting with the client. Once you're done with the consultation, there are some questions that you want to answer to trigger off the next set of steps in automation. Do they want representation? What's the summary of the consultation? The case value, practice area? Do we need to send them an engagement agreement? And how much is going to be the invoice? So those are some things that need to be answered after the consultation. Answer those, fill out a form, and then that triggers off the next set of steps. First thing that happens is we send the PNC, or the potential new client, a consult summary. So they automatically get an email with a summary of the consultation, which is whatever they put in this field on here. Then if they want representation, we send them an engagement agreement. So based on all the information that's already been collected in an engagement agreement or fee agreement, whatever it is you call it, retainer, it gets automatically drafted, emailed, and text messaged to the PNC so they can sign it. An invoice is also automatically generated and sent to them for them to pay it. If they have not signed yet, let's say you send them this information, they ask you for a retainer, you send it to them, and they don't sign it and pay it within the next day, for example. We send them the reminders. Say, hey, we sent you the retainer. Here's it is again for them to sign it. So you send them reminders for them to sign and pay. Then a week later, if they still have not signed the agreement, we create a task for someone within the firm to go ahead and follow up with the lead directly. Once they do sign and pay, in this particular case, we send them some forms. So based on the practice area, we send them some forms, intake forms that they need to fill out, update the pipeline that they're in. At this point, they've signed and they pay, so they automatically get an email with a welcome packet and information about how to contact the firm and everything that they need to know. And they also get an email for them to schedule their onboarding call. So if you look at this process here, none of this is technical, right? This is all really just outlining a set of steps that define this is what we want to happen when somebody calls our firm. I use diagrams. I personally, when I work with law firms, I like to draw diagrams because it helps paint the picture and it helps me kind of map everything out, right? But you can write this on paper. You can do it on a whiteboard. You can do it anywhere. It's more about the first step when you want to automate things is you want to map out exactly what's going to happen during this process. If they call and they schedule, do this. If they don't schedule, do this. If we want to send them an engagement agreement, do this. If we don't, do this. So it's all about just what do we want to map out for them. So this is a visual representation of an intake process, for example. So now, what are the benefits of automating your processes? One, professionalism. If somebody's calling your firm, you need to be following up with them as fast as possible because they're automatically, when they find you on Google, they see you in the map pack or they see your local service ad, and automatically they're calling you and somebody else. They're calling 2 or 3 law firms to try to get some advice. Right, so you need to be following up with them as soon as possible. There's no time to waste. 2, it reduces data entry errors. Once you enter information and you collect it initially, that data can flow from one system to another and to everything else that you send them. You don't have to enter data manually more than one time. 3, it saves you time. Now, this saving of time has a snowball effect. When automations save you time, they then give you more time for billable work. They give you time for business development, for you to improve your business in other areas, or it gives you time for family. Instead of leaving work at 7 o'clock, you can leave work at 5 o'clock. You save a couple of hours. If you can save yourself time by automating your processes, this time can be used for so many other things. They're just going to be more valuable than you sending out emails, or you generating an agreement, or you creating an invoice and sending. This time that you save from automating is just invaluable. And then in the long run, it increases your productivity, not only for you, but for your staff. It increases your productivity and it increases your profitability for your firm. Now, it's important for you to think of automations as a long-term investment. 1, it takes time to automate things. It takes time to build the automations. It takes time to think about what to automate or how to automate it. Not only does it take time, adoption is not easy. You're going to get pushback from your staff. You got to be the visionary in your law firm. That's just what it is. You have to be the visionary. You have to define the fact that you want to make certain processes better, and you got to make sure that your staff falls in line with that. And so make sure that you understand that it's not easy. When you try to adopt, you're going to get some pushback, and it's up to you to really motivate your staff to see the benefit, the long-term benefit that you're going to get from automating processes. And so all of this requires a lot of patience on your end, and it's going to require some patience on your staff as well. It is a long-term investment. There is going to be some upfront cost and some upfront time to make things happen, right? So now who's going to do your automations? You have different options. 1, you can do them. So if you have some kind of knowledge about how you want things to progress, you can learn how to use certain tools to automate certain processes, and you can start small and kind of build from there. So you can do it yourself. You can assign somebody on your staff to do it. Instead of you doing it yourself, you can assign somebody whose billable time may be not as high as yours and is more efficient for them to create the automations and learn certain things and learn some basics around automations so that they can build them out. And the third way you can do this is to hire an independent contractor like myself, who will come in, tell you, kind of help you visualize how you want things to happen, and from there actually build out the automations for you. Now, that's obviously going to cost you some money, but you're going to get it done faster. Doing it yourself is going to be cheaper, but it's going to take you longer. So which route you go, there's no right or wrong. It's just what works best for you. Where are you at with your law firm and your finances, to whether you can invest in somebody doing it for you or if you're doing it yourself. It's important that when you do this, start small. As I showed you in this diagram, you don't have to have technical jargon to make this happen. You can put processes down in plain English and specify, first, I need this to happen. Then I need this to happen. Then I need this to happen. That's what you need to think about. What is the process, the typical process that fulfills 95% of the cases? Write those out. Keep it simple. It doesn't have to be overly complicated. This is about saving you time, not making it complicated. And again, start small. Focus on one key process that has the biggest impact on your firm. A lot of times, if you haven't automated your client intake process is typically the biggest bang for your buck, because it not only helps you save time, it helps you increase conversions as well, which is very important when you're actually spending money for marketing. And lastly, make sure you overcome the fear of adoption. A lot of times we're scared to try new things. We're scared to try new tools. We're scared to adopt, or we even implement something, we make it happen, and then we're scared because we don't want to try it yet. We don't want to make any mistakes. You got to go for it, and you got to try it out, and you have to adopt the things that you implement. So don't be scared to adopt new systems, new strategies. It's going to have a very long-term effect for you. So just make sure you stay with it. Now let's talk about some processes that you can and cannot automate. Client intake and follow-up, definitely can automate that because it's typically the same set of steps for everybody that comes into your firm, right? Very easily automatable. Appointment scheduling and reminders, can you automate that? Document drafting, divorce cases or certain type of cases depending on what practice area you practice. Client communications like case updates, deadline reminders, typical check-ins, you can automate some of those as well. Lead management and marketing, so email campaigns, nurture campaigns for potential clients who maybe called your firm but they didn't initially schedule a consultation, or somebody who did consult with you but they have not, for whatever reason, actually retained you and decided to work with you. These are people that you can follow up with, and it can be done automated without you having to manually follow up. Task management. Certain scenarios require you to create a task, and a lot of times you can automate creating these tasks based on certain conditions. For example, if somebody hasn't followed up in a week has passed, a task can be created automatically. So that's something else that you can automate. Things that you cannot automate: client consultations. That still requires you. It still requires your expertise. It still requires your nuanced judgment, your understanding, your empathy. Automations cannot automate you and the experience that you bring to your client. So that's still something you have to do, obviously. Relationship building and networking. Trust and rapport relies on human interaction. So your emotional intelligence, your authenticity, you cannot automate relationship building and networking. You can do a little bit, you can automate some things, but for the most part, it still requires you a more human touch and a human interaction. And lastly, ethical and sensitive decision making. ChatGPT is becoming much more relevant. Law firms and lawyers are trying to figure out how can they use ChatGPT to leverage. Can I draft documents? Can I make it summarize these pleadings? Can I make it do? You can do a lot of that. At the end of the day, you have a moral responsibility and a duty to take what you get, the information that you get from a ChatGPT and the summaries that it gives you and all the things that it provides you. And you still have to have that final human element to it that uses your expertise, that uses your moral judgment, and that uses your understanding of your client's unique circumstances. That's extremely important. So don't rely on automations or automated systems like ChatGPT, which is great. Don't rely on those systems to just do it for you. They help you complete 70% of the work so that you can still put that 30% of human element that is required for those things to actually be done right. Lastly, let's talk about tools. You adopting automations is not so much about the tools, it's more about you. The tools can certainly help you create better automations, create better processes. But a lot of times what I've seen with a lot of law firms that I've worked with is not the tools that they're using. They're just scared to use them. So they do certain things and then they never do it, or they never use it right. Or they get certain tools, they pay a lot of money for them, and then they don't use them to their best of their ability, and then they blame the tool when it's really them. So when you're really automating, when you're choosing the tools that you're going to use, check yourself, not the tools a lot of the time. For the most part, tools that have an open API, it's a very important term, open API. Tools that have an open API are the best tools to use. And API stands for Application Programming Interface. Tools with an open API will allow you to send data from one tool to another tool through many different ways. It could be through Zapier, for example. Zapier is a tool that allows you to connect different systems. It plays middleman. It'll capture data from one place and send it to another place, for example. Right, so you can create automations using Zapier. You have other tools such as Lawmatics. Lawmatics is my favorite client intake tool for law firms. I think it's a great system if you set it up right. Tools like Lawmatics have automations built into them. So you build the workflows in the Lawmatics automations and you can pretty much automate your entire intake process and more. Tools like Lawmatics for case management, you have Clio, you have MyCase, you have Practice Panther. All of these tools are some of the best in the industry. Which one you use is not necessarily make one better than the other. It's just making sure that you are using tools that have an open API and that you're using them to the best ability. It's really not going to matter that you have great tools but don't use them the right way. If you're a lawyer or a law firm and you need help with your automations, there's a link below. Click it, schedule a call with me. We'll talk about your law firm, where you're currently at, and how we can help you get your automations up and running.